I was in that strange state between wakefulness and deep sleep. Somewhere round 5 a.m. the world outside was still, barely lit by the dim morning light creeping in through the curtains. My body was tangled in the blankets, uncomfortable as I tried to force myself to fall back asleep. I didn't want to fully wake up, but I couldn't seem to settle into sleep again. It was as if my mind was awake while my body resisted. Caught in this limbo, the silence of the room made everything feel heavier, almost suffocating. But it wasn't just the stillness that unnerved me. Something felt off. I couldn't pinpoint what it was exactly, but there was an underlying unease that made me more aware of every tiny sound in the room. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence, but it was as though the noise was distant, somehow detached from my reality. I tried to shift slightly, hoping to find a more comfortable position, but my body refused to cooperate. The exhaustion from the day before was still hanging on me, weighing me down, but my mind was sharp and alert. The more I tried to ignore it, the more I felt like something was watching me. I didn't know if I was dreaming or if I was awake, but the sensation of being aware in my half-sleep made everything feel even more real. The stillness of the room wasn't just peaceful, it was unsettling. I could hear the subtle creaks of the house settling, the faint rustle of the wind outside, but the air felt thick, as if it were holding its breath. I should have felt safe in my own room, but instead I felt like there was something there with me. It was then that I started to feel the weight of the silence pressing against me. I was aware of my every breath, the slight shift of the blankets, and yet it felt like there was something more, something unseen, waiting in the shadows. The sense of unease grew, and my body tensed. Even though I couldn't move, I wasn't sure if it was paralyzation from sleep or something far more terrifying. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. Still groggy, I decided to open my eyes just a little, thinking I might glimpse something that would ease the growing anxiety in my chest. But the moment I looked up, I froze. And the dim light I saw it, a shadow rising slowly from the far corner of my room. It didn't belong there, its shape shifting and fluid, moving with a deliberate slowness as if it was aware of my gaze. It was like nothing I had ever seen before. A cold shiver ran down my spine as the shadow seemed to glide effortlessly across the floor, heading directly toward the door. I wanted to scream, to move, but my body refused to obey. It was as though I were trapped in my own skin, unable to break free from the terror that gripped me. The shadow didn't make a sound, but its presence was suffocating, more real than anything else in the room. It was as if it was alive, aware of me, slowly creeping closer, and I felt my heart race in my chest, but my body remained paralyzed. It hovered over me, passing directly above, so close that I could almost feel the coldness emanating from it. I held my breath, not daring to blink, convinced that if I did, it would know and somehow come closer. The air around me felt heavier, thick with an unnatural cold that didn't belong in my room. Every part of me screamed to move, to run, but all I could do was lie there, completely still, my eyes fixed on the shadow as it continued its eerie journey. My mind screamed in terror, but my voice remained locked inside me, unable to make a sound. It was as if the shadow was feeding on my fear, growing bolder with every passing second. And then I felt the sense that it wasn't just moving past me. It was watching me, observing me in a way that was far more intimate and sinister than I could bear to understand. In that moment, I could feel its dark presence over me, suffocating the very air I breathed. The room felt impossibly cold, and my limbs were frozen, as if whatever was in its shadow had a hold on me. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, and every fiber of my being screamed that something evil was right there with me. The shadow was not just a shape, not just a trick of the light, it was something malignant, something that had no place in this world, and yet it was there, looming over me. The terror inside me began to swell, growing with each passing second. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. The air around me had changed, and there was no doubt in my mind that something was hovering just above me. A cold, oppressive weight pressed down on my chest, like an invisible hand suffocating me. My body remained frozen, paralyzed by fear, but my mind was screaming, telling me to move, to do anything. But it was as if my body had betrayed me. Whatever it was close, too close, and I could feel the weight of its presence pressing against me, like something was leaning in just above my face. There was no sound, no movement, yet in the dead silence I could hear it. Faint, incomprehensible whispers, like voices that weren't quite real, brushing against my ear. The words were so soft, so distant, but they carried an undeniable malice. I couldn't make out what they said, but the feeling behind them was enough to chill my very bones. Every part of me screamed that something malevolent was here, and it was watching me. I could almost feel its eyes on me, invisible, yet penetrating. It was as if my body was the prey, and it was the predator, slowly circling, inching closer with every heartbeat. The coldness was unbearable, seeping into my skin, into my bones. It wasn't just the temperature, it was an unnatural cold, the kind that doesn't belong in the real world. I felt the pressure intensify, as if whatever it was leaning more heavily on me. My breath quickened, but every inhalation felt like it wasn't enough, as if the air itself had become dense, filled with an invisible, suffocating force. It was like I was trapped in some unseen grip, held down by an unseen weight, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move. The whispers got louder, closer. Though I couldn't see a thing, they weren't comforting whispers. They were taunting, mocking, sending shivers of dread through me. I felt as though something cold, something dark, was studying me, inching closer with malicious intent. The terror inside me became so overwhelming that it was all I could think about. It was no longer just a feeling, it was an invasion of my very soul, and I knew, deep down, that whatever this presence was, it was not something I could escape. The paralysis seemed to tighten its grip, dragging me deeper into the darkness. It felt like I was trapped in my own body, my muscles frozen, my limbs useless. I could feel my pulse racing, my heart hammering in my chest, yet I couldn't move, couldn't escape. Every inch of me screamed for control, for the ability to fight back, but my body wouldn't respond. It was like I was battling some invisible force, something far stronger than I could comprehend. The pressure, both physical and psychological, was unbearable. It felt as though my very mind was being crushed under the weight of it. I tried to scream, tried to call out for help, but no sound escaped my mouth. It was as though something had stolen my voice, leaving me silent in my terror. My throat felt tight, and my chest constricted with each failed attempt to break free from the invisible force holding me down. The air was thick with dread, and it felt like the more I struggled, the closer that malicious presence came, like it was waiting for something, perhaps for me to break, to give in to the fear. The whispers grew louder again, as if it were mocking me, feeding off my panic. Every inch of my body screamed for release, but it was futile. The darkness around me seemed to press in even tighter, and I felt as though my very soul was on the brink of being consumed. It was as if the entity, whatever it was, had already claimed my body, and now it was after my spirit. My mind was a swirl of desperate thoughts, unable to escape the suffocating grip that held me prisoner. I could feel the weight of its eyes unseen, but intensely present, waiting, watching, as if it were savoring my terror. I was terrified that I was losing my battle, that I was about to slip completely into whatever nightmare this was. But then, with what felt like the last of my strength, I forced my body to react. I could feel the tremors running through my limbs, the muscles begging for relief, and with an effort so extreme that it felt as though it could tear me apart, I finally managed to let out a sound. It was a weak, muffled scream, but it was enough. The moment I made a sound, the presence seemed to hesitate just for a fraction of a second. It was as though the grip on me loosened, even if just slightly, and for that brief moment I felt a flicker of hope, a possibility that I might escape this terror. When I finally managed to scream, my voice cracked through the silence, shattering the heavy air that clung to my body. It was as if the presence, whatever it was, heard my plea. In an instant, the oppressive weight on me vanished. The cold chill that had consumed my body disappeared, and the suffocating pressure lifted as though it had never been there. The room returned to an eerie stillness, the kind of silence that seemed to stretch forever, leaving me disoriented and gasping for breath. I lay there, trembling uncontrollably, my heart racing in my chest, as I tried to piece together what had just happened. My body was soaked in sweat, my limbs weak, and my mind felt as though it had been dragged through the darkest of places. Despite the sudden relief, the fear didn't vanish completely. It lingered in the corners of my mind, gnawing at me, whispering that what I had just experienced was no mere nightmare or sleep paralysis. Something about it felt all too real, too present. I tried to convince myself that it had been a dream, a product of my exhausted mind playing tricks on me in the early hours of the morning. But deep down, I knew that what I had felt, that presence, that shadow, that suffocating fear, was something far more than that. It was as though it had been a warning, or worse, an encounter with something far beyond my understanding. I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't been alone in that room, and that whatever it was, it had only left because I had fought back, even if only for a moment. To this day, I can't forget the shadow or the chilling terror that accompanied it. Every night when I close my eyes, there's a lingering doubt that I might be visited again, that I might feel that weight on my chest and hear those whispers in the dark. I don't know if it was a ghost, a demon, or something else entirely, but whatever it was, it left a scar on my mind, a reminder that not everything in this world can be explained away, and some fears are very, very real.